My husband started a double life. The second family lived in a nearby town. Everything was revealed by accident. My son was playing a game online with a brother he didn't know about. The house was quiet, too quiet. I sat in the corner of the living room, the dim light from the screen of my phone, the only thing breaking the stillness. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through the photos that had appeared in the message. A photo of my husband, Mark, smiling in a sunlit backyard with a woman I didn't know. His arm was around her, a child standing between them, grinning up at the camera. I blinked, my mind struggling to make sense of the image before me. I was no stranger to surprises, but this was something I couldn't have prepared for. How was it possible that I had no idea? The life we had shared for years, the vacations, the anniversaries, the long nights spent talking about our future, had all been a lie. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know what to do, how to process it. This couldn't be real. There had to be an explanation, right? Maybe this was some kind of misunderstanding. Maybe it was an old photo that didn't mean anything. But the longer I stared at it, the less I could convince myself that this was anything but the truth. The photo wasn't just of him. It was of another family. His other family. A woman with dark hair, a child that looked to be around the same age as our son, Ethan. They were all so happy together, so carefree. And then there was Mark, my husband, the man I had married, the man I had shared my life with. How could he have done this to me? To us? I reached for my chest, feeling as if the air had been sucked out of the room. I blinked, trying to clear my vision, but the tears kept coming, blurring the screen. Mark was lying next to me, just in the next room, sleeping soundly. He didn't know what I had just discovered. I didn't know if I should confront him or if I should wait for more proof. My mind raced, my heart pounding in my ears. I swallowed hard, trying to calm myself. My hand shook as I reached for the phone again, scrolling through the other photos in the message. There were more, different angles, more smiles, more moments captured in time. They were a family, his family, and they'd been living in the same world as me all this time, while I had been blissfully unaware. I tried to breathe, to think, to process the impossibility of it all, but nothing made sense. The pain twisted in my chest, gnawing at me, as if something inside me had cracked wide open. I couldn't focus. All I could do was stare at that screen. The photos seared into my mind. Mark had been lying to me for years. How could I have missed the signs? How could I have been so blind? I had to know more. I had to understand. But at the same time, I didn't want to know. The thought of confronting him, of tearing our life apart, felt like a weight I wasn't ready to carry. But I had to. I pressed my face into my hands, trying to stop the tears, but they came anyway. The pain of betrayal was sharp, raw, and it overwhelmed me. And then, just as I was starting to gather myself, something else caught my eye. My son's name, a message from him, sent only minutes ago. He had been playing an online game, something he did almost every evening, a way for him to unwind after school. He loved it. He was good at it, too. But this message, it was strange. He had made a new friend in the game, someone he'd met randomly. I hadn't thought much of it before, but now, as I read his words, my stomach twisted again. Hey, Mom, I think I met a new friend today. He said his name is Adam, and he's like, really cool. He said he lives in the next town over. I froze. A new friend. In the next town over, the same town where Mark's other family lived. The realization hit me like a punch in the gut. My hands went numb, and my heart stopped beating for a moment. I had to see more. I had to confirm what I was beginning to fear. I quickly opened the game, my fingers trembling as I typed in Ethan's username, bringing up his latest match. His new friend Adam was online. I scrolled through the chat history, searching for anything that could confirm my suspicions, and then I saw it. Ethan had asked Adam, almost offhandedly, "Do you have any brothers?" Adam's response was simple. "Yeah, one. We play together sometimes. You should meet him sometime." The weight of the words hit me like a tidal wave. My son had a brother he didn't know about, a brother he'd met through a game, and that brother was from the same family, the family that had been hidden from me for all these years. I stared at the screen, unable to move. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of it. My son had been unknowingly talking to his own brother. How was this possible? How had Mark kept this from me? How had he kept this from all of us? My whole world was spinning, everything I thought I knew about my life unraveling in front of me. This wasn't just about a man lying to his wife. This was about a family, two families, separated by a secret that had gone on far too long. I couldn't sit still anymore. I needed answers, and I needed them now. I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that settled in the pit of my stomach. Every time I closed my eyes, the image of Mark with another family, his smile directed at a woman who wasn't me, flickered before my eyes. But now, with Ethan's game message, the idea of another family, of a hidden world, seemed far more real than I ever could have imagined. I tried to focus on something else. I tried to focus on Ethan. He was still too young to understand what was going on, but the fact that he had unknowingly made a connection with his brother, it was a cruel twist of fate. And I couldn't help but feel an odd mixture of guilt and anger. How could I have been so oblivious? How could Mark have hidden something like this from me? I walked to Ethan's room that evening, my footsteps heavy on the hardwood floor, each step louder than the last. He was sitting at his desk, headset on, playing his game. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching him laugh at something his friend had said through the headset. A casual, innocent laugh. I wanted to hate that laugh. I wanted to tear this world apart. But I couldn't. He was my son. He was innocent in all of this. Ethan, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, who is this Adam you're playing with? He turned around in his chair, his face lighting up. Oh, Mom, you should meet him. He's awesome. He's got this crazy skill in the game, and we've been teaming up a lot lately. Is he local? I asked, my voice quiet but steady. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly as he took off his headset, confused by the sudden shift in my tone. No. I think he said he lives in the next town over. I don't know, really. We just met today. My heart pounded louder. Does he ever talk about his family? His parents? Ethan shrugged. Not really, but I think he's got a brother. He mentioned him a few times. Why? I didn't answer him. The questions were spinning in my mind too fast, colliding with each other. I excused myself from his room, feeling a wave of nausea hit me. My fingers were already reaching for my phone again as I made my way back to the living room. I had to find out more. I had to confirm that this wasn't some coincidence, some odd set of circumstances that I was imagining in my head. The truth was starting to form in fragments, small, impossible pieces of a puzzle that I couldn't quite fit together. I opened Mark's email account on my phone. I hadn't been through it before, but something compelled me to. It wasn't the first time I'd wondered if I was missing something, but now it felt like the only thing that mattered. I needed evidence. I needed something concrete that could explain how I had been living this lie. And then, there it was. An email from a name I didn't recognize. The subject line, Family Weekend Plans. I clicked it, heart pounding. The email was brief, but its contents were more than enough. It was an exchange about scheduling a weekend trip. A family getaway planned for the upcoming month. The details about accommodations and activities clearly laid out. But the chilling part? The recipient was his other wife, and the trip was for them, their children, and Mark. I felt dizzy, the world narrowing down around me. How had he managed to compartmentalize his life so well? How had he played this game for so long? I thought I knew everything about my husband. His likes, his dislikes, his habits. But now I realized I didn't know him at all. I sat back on the couch, the weight of the discovery sinking in. The house felt so much bigger now, so much emptier. Every corner seemed to hide another lie, another piece of my world that no longer made sense. And then a thought surfaced. This wasn't just about betrayal. This was about my own son, about Ethan, and his connection to a brother he didn't even know existed. The reality of what Mark had done hit me harder than anything else. He hadn't just lied to me, he had lied to Ethan too. I grabbed my phone again, scrolling through the contacts in my own email, feeling like a part of me was dying with every click. And then I found something even more damning. Old pictures, pictures that I didn't recognize. Family portraits, holiday photos, photos of Mark's other family, hidden in an old folder. He'd kept these. He'd kept them from me for years. I began to panic. Everything was starting to click, and the horror of it consumed me. Was Mark playing both families off each other? How many years had this been going on? Was I really the second wife, the one who was kept in the dark? Had I been nothing more than a side life to him? The air around me felt thick, suffocating. I felt like I couldn't breathe. The tension built inside me until it felt like my chest would crack open. But I had to know the truth. I couldn't pretend anymore. I needed answers, even if it meant tearing everything down. I stood up, pacing the room, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts. I needed to confront him. I needed to face him. But how could I look him in the eye? How could I ask him to explain the impossible? My mind raced, but then something else caught my attention. Another email, this one from Ethan. He had sent it not long after the first, his words casual, almost as if nothing had happened. I think Adam might be my brother. His mom said they don't talk about it much, but I think he knows. I'm going to try and talk to him more tomorrow. Maybe we can all hang out next weekend. The words hit me like a hammer. Ethan knew. He knew something was wrong. He knew something about Adam, and about the connection between them. I was no longer just uncovering the truth for myself. I was uncovering it for him, too. The house felt colder now. I kept walking through the rooms, feeling the weight of the walls closing in on me. Every space in this house, once filled with comfort and routine, now seemed like a prison, each corner harboring the echoes of Mark's lies. I had thought I knew him, but now I couldn't even recognize the man sleeping in our bed. I stood in the kitchen, my hands gripping the edge of the counter. My mind was a whirlwind. I had seen the email, the photos, and the messages. I had pieced together enough to know that Mark had been living two lives, lives that had intertwined in ways I couldn't ignore. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. I needed more. My heart pounded as I stood in front of the fridge. I pulled open the drawer where we kept the receipts. Ordinary, mundane things that marked the everyday moments of our life. I shuffled through them, hoping for some sign, some clue that would bring this whole facade crashing down. And then my fingers brushed against something unusual. A receipt for a hotel stay, for 2 rooms. It was dated last month. Mark had told me he was on a business trip that weekend. I remember because I had spent the weekend alone with Ethan. Now I was staring at this receipt, the weight of the lies crushing me. There was no business trip. There was a hotel stay with someone else. My stomach churned as I held the receipt in my hand. I could almost feel Mark's presence in the house, as if he were watching me, silently daring me to look further. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. I had to confront him, didn't I? I couldn't keep going on like this. But how could I? I turned, pulling open the drawer where we kept our old photo albums. I had stopped looking through them years ago. Nostalgia, I'd told myself, was best left in the past. But now I found myself pulling them out, flipping through the pages. I had to see the life we had built together, the moments that had once been filled with love and happiness. I needed to remember who we were before all of this. I needed something to hold on to. But as I flipped through the pictures, I found something that shattered what little illusion I had left. A photo of Mark and me, taken during our anniversary trip a few years ago. We were standing on a beach, our arms wrapped around each other, smiling. But behind us, barely noticeable at first, there was something, someone, a woman, her face obscured by a shadow, standing just at the edge of the frame. I stopped breathing. I had never noticed her before, and now she was there, unmistakable, caught in the background of what was supposed to be our moment. Had she been there the whole time, a silent witness to our happiness? Or had she been lurking in the background, a part of his double life that I had never seen? I couldn't process it. The photo felt like a direct slap in the face, an undeniable confirmation that I had been living in a lie. I snapped the album shut, my heart racing. The room felt suffocating, as if the walls were closing in on me. My hands were shaking, and the cold, hard reality was starting to settle deep within me. This was no longer just about a photo or a receipt. This was about everything I had believed in, everything I had known about our life. I needed to confront him. I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't keep living this nightmare. But there was still more. I couldn't stop now, not when I was so close. I started going through his things, his laptop, his jacket pockets, anything that could give me more answers. I knew I was crossing a line. I knew this was wrong. But I didn't care anymore. I couldn't wait for him to confess. I needed to know the full extent of what had been hidden from me. It wasn't long before I found it. A folder on his computer hidden deep within an archive. A folder labeled with nothing but a date. June 15th, 2022. I clicked it open, my heart pounding in my chest. Inside, I found a collection of photos. More photos of Mark, this time with the other woman. But it wasn't just the two of them. There were pictures of their children, their lives together, photos of vacations, birthday parties, and ordinary days spent in the glow of a family that wasn't mine. They were all smiles, all laughter, the life I had been denied. I felt sick. I felt betrayed in a way I never thought possible. And then, buried at the bottom of the folder, I saw it. A video. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the play button, but I knew I had to see it. I needed to. I clicked it. The video opened to Mark and the other woman, sitting together in a cozy living room. They were laughing, talking about their plans for the weekend. Mark was laughing with her the way he used to laugh with me. I hadn't realized how much I had missed that sound, how much I had relied on it to feel secure. But now it sounded hollow. It was a different kind of laugh, one that didn't belong to me. They talked about their children, their plans for the future. Mark spoke of their son, Adam, with the same affection he had once spoken of Ethan. And as they laughed, it became clear this wasn't just a fling, a mistake, or some temporary lapse. This was real. This was a life he had been living alongside mine, hidden from me. I felt the weight of everything crash down on me. I was no longer just the wife who had been betrayed. I was the woman who had been completely deceived, living in a world of shadows. How could I have been so blind? But even as the rage and pain consumed me, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I had been looking for answers, and now I had them. I had the truth. It was ugly, it was painful, but it was the truth. And now I knew what I had to do. The house was quiet, too quiet. I stood in front of the bedroom door, my heart hammering in my chest. Mark was still asleep, unaware that everything had changed. The life we had built together, everything I had trusted and believed in, was now nothing more than a house of cards, ready to collapse under its own weight. I took a deep breath, the taste of adrenaline and fear sharp on my tongue. I didn't know what I was going to say to him, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't wait any longer. The truth had already found its way into my hands, piece by painful piece, and now it was time for him to face it. I stepped into the room, the door creaking slightly as I pushed it open. Mark was still lying in bed, the sheets tangled around him. He looked peaceful, unaware of the storm that was coming. For a fleeting moment, I almost wished I could go back to that time when things were normal, when I had no idea what was happening behind my back. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. I walked to the side of the bed and stood there for a moment, just watching him. His breathing was steady, and his face was relaxed, free from the burden of guilt. If only he knew how much his lies had destroyed me. If only he could understand the weight of what I had uncovered. I didn't wait any longer. I couldn't. "Mark," I said, my voice shaking, but firm. He stirred, his eyes fluttering open, still blurry from sleep. He blinked at me for a moment, then smiled. That smile. The one that used to make my heart flutter. The one that had reassured me that everything was fine. But now, it felt like a dagger to my chest. "Hey," he mumbled, still half asleep. "What's wrong? You okay?" I took a step back, my hands balling into fists at my sides. I had spent the last few days holding my breath, trying to make sense of everything. But now all I felt was a mix of anger and betrayal. I couldn't hold it in anymore. Not when I knew the truth. Not when I had seen the evidence with my own eyes. "No, I'm not okay," I said, my voice cold, harder than I intended. Mark's smile faded. "What's going on?" he asked, his tone suddenly wary. He sat up in bed, rubbing his eyes as if trying to clear the fog from his mind. I reached for my phone, my hands still trembling. I held it out in front of him, showing him the photo, the one I had seen days earlier, the one of him with his other family. His face, once so full of confidence and calm, went pale as he recognized what I was showing him. His mouth opened, but no words came out. I watched as his eyes flicked to the screen, then to me, then back to the photo. He couldn't even look me in the eye. "You have another family, Mark," I said, my voice breaking. "How long has this been going on? How long have you been lying to me?" He didn't answer at first. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the panic rising as he tried to come up with a response. But I didn't give him the chance to explain. Not yet. I had to get it all out. "And Ethan, our son, he has a brother he doesn't even know about. You've been living 2 lives, Mark. 2 families, 2 homes, and you didn't think I'd ever find out?" I could feel the tears burning behind my eyes, but I fought them back. This wasn't the time for tears. This was the time for truth. This was the time to finally demand answers. Mark's eyes flicked to the floor, and I saw the guilt in his posture. The silence between us stretched out, thick and suffocating, like we were trapped in a moment that we couldn't escape from. I had given him everything, trusted him with my heart, and this was what I got in return. He started, his voice weak, almost as if he were trying to find the words to make it all make sense. But there was no making sense of this. There was no excuse for what he had done. Don't try to explain," I interrupted, my voice sharp. "There is no explanation. There's nothing you can say that will make this better. You betrayed me. You betrayed Ethan. You betrayed everything we had, and for what? For a life I didn't even know about?" Mark finally looked up at me, his face drawn with regret. "I never meant for it to go this far. I thought I could keep everything separate. I didn't want to hurt you." "Didn't want to hurt me?" I echoed, my voice rising with disbelief. "You didn't want to hurt me. You've been living a lie for years, Mark. You've been living with another woman, another family, your other kids, while I was here, thinking everything was fine. And now you think you can just apologize? Is that it? You think an apology will fix this?" I felt the anger surge inside me, a fire that was hard to control. But it wasn't just anger. It was heartbreak. It was pain. It was every moment of my life with him crashing down into a million pieces. Mark's face twisted in pain. "I didn't want to hurt you, I swear. I never wanted this to happen." "You never wanted this to happen?" I repeated, shaking my head in disbelief. "You never wanted this to happen, but it did. And now we're here, and I'm done, Mark. I'm done." He stood up from the bed, but I held my hand out, stopping him in his tracks. Don't try to make this better. I don't want you to fix it. I want you to understand that everything you've built is a lie. You've hurt me in ways you can't even begin to comprehend. And I can't keep living like this. Not anymore." He took a step back, his face crumbling in guilt and regret. "Please," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I love you. I never wanted to lose you." But his words, empty now, felt like nothing. I had heard enough. I had seen enough. "I don't know who you are anymore," I said, turning away from him, my voice low but firm. "And I can't keep pretending." With that, I walked out of the room. I didn't look back. There was nothing more to say. The silence that followed our confrontation was suffocating. Mark's presence felt like a ghost lingering in the air, his voice still echoing in my mind. But it didn't matter anymore. He had no power over me, not anymore. I needed time to think, time to breathe. The anger, the sadness, The betrayal. It was all too much. It weighed on me like 1,000 pounds, crushing every ounce of hope I once had for us. But I knew one thing for sure. I was done being the victim. Done being the woman who stood by, wondering what went wrong. Now I had the answers. Now it was time for me to take control. I grabbed my phone, scrolling through the contacts. My mind raced as I debated who to turn to. There was no one left to trust, no one who hadn't been affected by Mark's lies. But there was one person who had been part of this mess from the start, someone who needed to know the truth. I dialed the number, and after a few rings, a voice I had never heard before picked up. Hello? My blood ran cold. This was it. This was the woman, the one who had stolen the life I thought I had. I could hear the faint sounds of children in the background, the normal chaos of a family. My family. Is Mark there? I asked, my voice steady but laced with ice. Who is this? She replied, her tone cautious, defensive. I took a breath. I'm his wife, I said, almost laughing at how absurd it sounded. You're with my husband, my life. There was a long pause, the kind that stretched on forever. I could hear the woman's sharp intake of breath on the other end. I wasn't sure what she was expecting, but I knew what I was about to say would change everything for both of us. I know everything, I continued, the words flowing with surprising calmness. I know about you. I know about your kids. I know about the life you and Mark have built. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I don't know anymore. I won't be your fool. She stammered for a moment, then finally spoke, her voice wavering. I didn't know you. I didn't know you existed. Mark, he told me he was separated. I felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat. Oh, of course he did. He told you whatever he needed to make you believe him. Just like he told me. I paused, letting the silence sit between us, the weight of what I had just revealed sinking in. This woman was just as much a victim in this as I was, but that didn't change the fact that she had been living in my place. She had been part of this betrayal. I don't want to talk to you anymore, I said, cutting her off. I don't need an apology. I just need you to know that this ends now. You and Mark, that's his mess to deal with, but I'm done. I hung up before she could respond, but that wasn't enough. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't just walk away from this. I couldn't let Mark go on with his life, thinking he could get away with this. He had destroyed everything. Our family, our home, our trust, and I was going to make sure there were consequences. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet, but something told me I needed to hit him where it would hurt the most. His ego, his life outside of this family. And maybe, just maybe, I could get my own closure in the process. The days that followed were a blur of decisions, some small, some huge. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I didn't just want revenge for myself. I wanted to make sure that no one would ever forget what he had done. I needed to expose him, not just to the other woman, but to everyone he had lied to the world that had seen him as the man I had married, the father of my child. I filed for divorce. I knew it was the only way to begin the process of cutting him out of my life completely. But there was more. I contacted the people who knew him, friends, colleagues, anyone who had ever supported him, believing he was the perfect husband and father. I didn't care about the mess this would cause anymore. I wasn't going to protect him. Mark tried to call me multiple times, but I ignored every one of his calls. I knew what he wanted. He wanted me to go back to being the woman I had been before. Quiet, compliant, always forgiving. But I couldn't. I couldn't go back to being that person. Not when the truth was so much worse than I could have ever imagined. And then, the final blow. I got a call from his work. He had been caught embezzling money. Small amounts at first, but large enough that it would get him fired and most likely face criminal charges. The shock in his voice when I picked up the phone was all I needed to know. He never saw it coming. "Why are you doing this?" he begged when I confronted him. "I'm sorry, okay? Please, just listen. We can fix this. I shook my head, a smile creeping onto my face. No, Mark, it's too late to fix anything now. You've ruined everything, and now it's my turn. The finality of it hit me like a wave. I didn't need to hurt him anymore. Life was already doing that for me. But I needed to reclaim my own narrative. This was no longer about him. This was about me, about who I was and who I was going to become. I spent the next few months rebuilding my life. I worked on myself, on my relationships, on rediscovering the person I was before Mark's lies consumed me. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight, but I knew one thing for sure. I would never let myself be a victim again. As for Mark, he lost everything. His family, his job, his reputation, all of it came crashing down. And in the end, it was all his doing. I had taken my power back, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free.